I want to just highlight some specifics about the webinar itself. So all of you who have joined us will be muted. We have enabled the question and answer feature in Zoom, so you should see a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to submit your questions via that Q&A box in Zoom. Our team is here. We'll be monitoring questions, and we have allocated quite a bit of time at the end of the session for answering all of your questions. And we hope that the presentation that we're providing today will also answer many of your questions. And then finally, I have enabled recording. So the session will be recorded so that you can revisit it. We will post it on our website, and we'll provide some links to you at the end of the session, as well as the slides. We've also created a frequently asked questions resource for parents and families that we hope can also supplement with this information that we're providing you today. I want to be respectful of your time. I understand all of you are tuning in during your lunchtime. My name is Kathleen Head. I'm Director of the Global Experience Office. And again, my colleagues and I are thrilled to have you here today and looking forward to introducing you to the Interactive Qualifying Project. So in terms of what we're going to go over today, we, again, want to talk a little bit about the IQP. What is it? How does it work? We'll talk about the application process, so how students apply to be considered for the program, provide you with some important dates, program logistics, talk a little bit about costs and the global scholarship, and close with some health and safety information. And then finally, we'll get to your questions. All right, so to introduce you to the program, we thought what better way than to show you a short video that gives you a better idea of what the IQP is, what types of projects students are completing, where they're doing their projects. So this gives you just a little bit of an introductory flavor to the program.
One of the reasons why I came here was for the Interactive Qualifying Project. It's really cool that you get to go anywhere in the world. They offer so many different locations, and I don't think you get that at any other college.
You're doing a project where you're impacting the country where you're doing your project in. You feel like you're making a difference.
Our project relates to Arctic lupine, which is a plant used for revegetation. It helps out the soil with nutrients and basically makes it better environment for trees to grow.
We had to learn a lot about the history behind it, why it was brought in, and how those reasons kind of impact its usage today.
We're trying to help give like a decision matrix and like a choose your own adventure kind of guide to help them decide whether or not it's what they want for their land.
What I see as a project advisor time and time again are students producing these results that I would expect of graduate students. Completing projects, completing technically difficult tasks with grace, with ease, and with a camaraderie and teamwork that is absolutely unique.
Here in Monteverde, they have big rainfall problems where they experience either large droughts or flooding. Our project was initially only based on irrigation, but when we arrived, the needs of the community had changed, and they asked us if we could also include drainage. And of course we said yes, and I think WPI has really prepared us for adapting to things really quickly. It's part of the 7-week terms. It's part of what we learn to do as WPI students.
We teach students to be flexible in their thinking. That's one of the primary things that you learn in Worcester. So when you get here, you're not shaken up. You have the tools to figure out how to set a new direction.
It's been really great to work in a project team with different majors because it gives you different perspectives on the problem that we're trying to solve.
The WPI students are learning how to navigate new open-ended problems, how to enhance their ability to work with professionals. They experience all of those soft skills during this project-based learning that are really hard to teach in a classroom.
Working outside the classroom pushes me to think more critically and outside the box while also taking the local community's culture into account.
Even though it's domestic, the culture is really different. They've had to learn new things, they've had to adapt to new styles, and really take in that life is different here.
The goal of our project is to promote film tourism in New Mexico by creating an app or website that provides users with information about films and the locations at which they were filmed. I've definitely learned a lot about leadership, which is typically a role that I'm not in, so I've been able to delegate tasks and really help everyone stay on track and get the best out of them.
Working with different team members really helps, and also boosts your confidence because you deal with other people and you have to consider their views too, and make some consideration in everything that you do because we all come from different places.
I'm here at the Farm State Project Center in Patton, Massachusetts.
We are working on making a more accessible sort of bridge structure, as well as also providing nature play elements for the educators at Turn Back Time to help them show the kids more of like the plants, the animals, and really getting them immersed in that area.
My team and I are working with the local water authority for Panama to optimize the distribution of water throughout the city and into the greater metropolitan areas.
At Panama City, there are 11,000 people who don't have access to clean water all the time.
Most of the information that we gather for our project is in the field. Working on a real project and something that's not just hypothetical feels really rewarding.
Project-based learning teaches people how to engage ethically with communities. And to me, if you're coming out of any sort of education system, that's just something you should be able to do.
Having an actual end goal and dealing with people who are local to the communities here feels a lot more fulfilling than practice problems in class. It feels like we're doing something that really matters and going to have a lasting impact.
I know many examples of businesses and organizations who in an interview have said to students, tell me about something where you've been able to work with other people to solve a problem, to be on a team, to have to learn to accommodate and take advantage of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And our students just go, oh, let me tell you. I'll tell you about Monteverde. I'll tell you about Copenhagen. I'll tell you about Wellington. And you watch employers switch from what I call low beam to high beam. It's, wow, that's interesting. Tell me about that.
WPI's project experience is a lot different than others that my friends have gone on in their universities, largely because there's no classes that we have to take.
I'm learning, and perhaps the next part of my life is a part of my life where I'm making money, but this is like one spot in between when I can really have an impact. And I didn't realize how hard I could work, how much effort I could put into something when I really believe in the result.
Excellent. So in terms of what you saw in the video, and to provide a little bit more of a well-rounded description of the IQP and all that it entails, as you saw from the video, we operate both domestic and international project centers. So students have the opportunity to travel, have the opportunity to travel here to places here in the United States, as well as to every year the number changes, but about over 30 countries in our program. Most often we operate in a cohort model where the group size, so the group size is 24 students, and students are traveling with 2 WPI faculty members. So again, you got to hear from both students and faculty who have participated in our program. That cohort is then divided into teams, often assuming we have 24 students in the cohort, it's 6 teams. So we have approximately 3 to 4 students on a team, and they're working on their designated project. Sorry, I'm seeing a comment, gray box is still blocking a part of the view. So give me just 1 second. Let me see if I can fix this. Thanks for reporting that. Can one of my colleagues let me know if you can see a full view here verbally?
Looks good.
Sorry about that. Okay, still looking good. I can proceed.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So as we mentioned, the cohort is divided into teams, and each team is working on a project. The IQP is distinct in that the projects themselves are interdisciplinary. So this is what makes this our most popular program, because students across all majors have to complete an IQP as part of their undergraduate degree. So that's regardless of whether you're a data science, computer science, mechanical engineering, biotech, et cetera. So students are working with other students across various majors, and all of our projects are designed to be interdisciplinary, and all of them are looking at some intersection between society, technology, and culture. The IQP itself carries 9 credits, so all students participating in the IQP are earning 9 credits or a full unit or load over the course of one single term, and I'll show you what that looks like in one of the next slides. So they're spending the entire term, so all 7, sometimes 8 weeks, depending on the term, on site. So they're in Santa Fe for the 7 weeks doing their project work, and only doing their project work that carries those 9 credits. In terms of what can be expected, students are working. We describe to them it's kind of like a full-time job. They're working 40 hours a week. They're out in the field conducting their research. They might be doing interviews, doing GIS mapping, all sorts of different things related to their project. So it is typically a full load in terms of the Monday through Friday kind of 9 to 5 or 40-hour work week schedule, which may vary, again, based on the project and based on the location. All of our off-campus IQPs offer students the opportunity to engage with the community, and our projects are typically sponsored, or we're working collaboratively with a local organization, a local company, to help define the scope of the project. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how we support your students, both from an academic and a cultural standpoint, as well as kind of the logistics around travel prep once they're committed to the program. So here's a little bit of a visual so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of the scheduling. So if you're unfamiliar with WPI's academic calendar, we operate on a term system that resembles a quarter-based system. So A and B term take place in the fall semester, and C and D term take place in the spring semester. So this student's schedule is reflecting a C term off-campus IQP. And so you could see that all students are required to take 2 prerequisite courses. So one is a social science research methods course that they're taking during with their cohort and during the term before they travel. So again, if it were a D term IQP, they would be taking these courses in B and C term, et cetera. And then a PQP, which is a pre-qualifying project. This is a 1.5 credit prerequisite where student project teams are meeting with their faculty advisors who will be on site with them, and they're starting to kind of come up with a plan for how they're going to spend their time on site. So the research methods class, they're doing all of their background research about the nature of their project, orienting their project in a local, global setting and within the research. And then the PQP is the more kind of practical planning, where as they're starting to discover things, they're putting together their plan for how they're going to complete their project and their final deliverable during their full term. 2 terms prior, some project centers require a cultural pre-PQP. And forgive us for all the acronyms, that seems to be a WPI thing. But in some places, it's valuable and necessary for our students to have a little bit of more designated cultural prep. So one example of that might be Bangkok. And so in Thailand, our students are actually working on projects in collaboration with local Thai students at a university in Bangkok. And so it's helpful for students to be successful while they're in Thailand, for them to have a basic level of knowledge around customs, around language, culture, so that they can successfully work with their peers, their Thai peers, and the Thai organizations that are sponsoring their projects. This does not apply to all project centers, but if it does, it's communicated to students in our website, which is called eProjects, which provides more detailed information about each of the project centers. We are also enrolling students in a travel preparation course. Here, we are providing students with information about booking flights, information about insurance, information about health, and making sure that students are getting the information they need and are provided with the resources they need, and are also completing the pre-travel requirements that we need to be able to support them while they're away. This does apply. I see the question in the chat. This does apply for both domestic and international placements. So all students in our program are enrolled in the GEO travel prep course. And before we get into specifics about being on site and all of the nuances of that, I want to start by introducing to you the application. And to do that, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Deb, who's going to talk a little bit more about that process, high level, as this is something all students have to complete in order to participate in the program.
Thanks, Kathleen. So your student is probably getting ready to apply for their IQP if they are a sophomore right now, to do their IQP in their junior year or in the academic year 2026-2027. So our IQP application just opened last week. It will remain open until October 2nd, and students must submit by that deadline. So the IQP application, it's not extensive. It has a few different pieces to it that I'll go over quickly here. First off, your students will encounter a terms and conditions and waivers section, and they'll basically just need to read some terms and conditions of applying to the program and participation in the program, and waivers to allow us access to their transcripts. The next sections that they'll encounter in the application are the cultural interests and language sections. And this is where your student will be able to tell us if they have particular language skills or if they have interest in a particular cultural area. We have 4 different cultural hubs: Asia, Europe, I can't even remember them, Latin America, and I'm not sure of the 4th one, Africa, I believe. And if your student has been studying a language for a while, taking cultural courses, or engaged in other cultural activities, they can let us know in this area that their interests lie in those particular areas, and that they might like to use their IQP as another way of furthering those interests. There's also a section on the application where the students will self-rate their extracurricular activities, work, and leadership. So we provide a rubric by which students can determine whether they have superior extracurricular activities, or moderate, if they're moderately active outside of academics, or if they just like to focus on their academics to the exclusion of many other activities. The next section that they'll encounter are the 2 essays. We have a first essay that asks students to just talk a little bit about something that they're personally interested in. It can be any topic at all. These are short essays, about 200 to 250 words. The second essay is on teamwork and working in teams, the experiences that they've had, and what they've learned from working in teams. We have another section in the application, and this is not a scored section, called academic history. And that's where a student who may have had a little bit of a bumpy ride their first term or so at WPI can explain why that might be, and how much that might not be reflective of how the student actually works. and how the student actually learns. And finally, we have the preference form. And this is the part of the application that generates the most interest from our students. It is where they get to tell us the places that they are very interested in and the places that they will not or could not go. So in order for students to fill out that section of the application, there's a few things that we ask them to consider before applying or when they're filling out their preference form. The first is their academic schedule. As Kathleen mentioned previously, they're required to take the ID 2050 and PQP courses before their project term, so they need to know that they can not only fit the project into their schedule, but also these courses as well in the term before their travel. And as Kathleen also mentioned, some projects may require a pre-PQP 2 terms prior to the project. So students can find this information on the eProjects program page for each project center. They have access to eProjects and with their login, and that's where we list all of our programs, all of our project centers that we are currently offering, and a lot of information about each. So they can go in and get the information about whether there is additional academic requirements for participation in a particular project center. And finally, students should consider their commitment to athletic teams, ROTC, and whether their specific majors have courses that are required but only offered in particular terms. So they may not be able to travel in every term. They need to understand which terms they are available to do an IQP. We also ask them to consider some personal factors that could impact their comfort in traveling to different locations. And of course, language skills is one. The cost of a program is another. Students have different levels of ability to pay for travel, and we ask them to carefully consider the costs before rating certain project centers. We also ask them to think about their personal health concerns like allergies, their personal mobility, their just the different abilities to participate in activities for those different regions that they might be wanting to travel to. And if they do have concerns about that, they can feel free to call our office and ask and talk to somebody about how their personal health concerns may impact their travel. And also, we would like to mention that non-US passport holders may want to consider whether they want to go outside of the country at this particular time and where the best places to travel for them might be. And finally, we ask them to take demand into consideration. Each cycle, some of our sites receive a lot more interest than others. A lot of these are European sites or our sites in Australia and New Zealand. And these sites, along with any new site that comes up, usually have a very high demand. So if students only include higher demand sites in their preference ratings, they risk not receiving a placement. So there is that possibility for students, so they need to take care when they are filling out their preference form. And rating a non-residential site will result in a high likelihood of being placed in that site. And students are informed of all of this information, and we have drop-in sessions to guide them through this portion of the application. So the important dates to remember are October 2nd. That's the application deadline, and we do not accept any applications after October 2nd at noon. Students will hear of their placements or their placement decisions in early January, and they will need to commit to or decline that placement by mid-January.
Thanks, Deb. There's a couple of questions that relate to the content that you just presented that I want to make sure we answer. So the first question is, does when you complete the application matter? So if a student completes their application today versus a student who completes their application on October 1st, does that matter?
No, that doesn't matter. Once the October 2nd deadline at noon comes, anybody who has submitted an application by that deadline will be considered part of the application process, and all reviews will begin after October 2nd. So no applications will be reviewed prior to that, and no students will be placed based on a first come, first served basis. It's all done at the same time, and it's all done by algorithm, so it's really done at the same time. Placements are made within like a minute or two, all at once.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the next question a couple of folks had in relation to the demand and the distinction between a residential and a non-residential site. Can you explain to the group what a non-residential site is?
Yes, a non-residential site is a site in which a student does not reside in their project center location. So an example of that would be the Worcester Community Project Center. Your student will continue to live on campus while commuting to the Worcester Project Center in downtown Worcester daily for their project, but they will not, they will not be living in a different location. A residential project center would be anything in Europe or Africa where your student is traveling to a location and living at that location. So we have a number of non-residential locations like Worcester, Water Resource, Boston. Boston is also a non-residential project center.
Thank you. And then the last question, which I think I can answer, is whether, like, how do students know, which sites are high demand? Or Deb, do you want to answer that? How do they know? How do they know that?
So students, one of the first things that we ask students to do is to go to our Project Center resources page, and they can navigate from there to the How to Apply page for IQP. So these are all resources that we have covered in our kickoff presentation and we'll go over in our drop-in sessions. But students will be able to see an updated list of high demand project centers listed on the IQP How to Apply page. And I believe it's in either the Explore section or the Prepare section of that page. And parents do have access to that page as well.
Thank you. And then there's a couple of questions just about like what information is in e-projects, which I'll try to answer quickly. One of the questions was in relation to language, right? So we are recommending that students do their due diligence and gain an understanding of whether or not language is a requirement. I will say anecdotally, or based on what we know about the program, most sites do not require language. If there are additional academic or language requirements, that information is provided to students and is very clearly called out in e-projects. The other question that we got that we want to clarify, e-projects it requires WPI credentials to log in. So this is something that your students, you could certainly do this with your students via screen share or together in person, but students have access to this detailed information about each project center. And we've provided some links at the end of this presentation that will provide you with some of the resources that we've been talking about, the list of high demand sites, a preview of the application, our recommendations for considerations when applying. So that's just, I want to make sure we get those questions answered. Oops. And then I want Deb to be able to present this last slide because it relates to another question that someone asked about the application processes and kind of timelines.
Okay, so right now we're involved in what we call the primary application process, and that's for 26-27 academic year projects. The application opened on the 29th, and as I mentioned before, the application deadline is at noon on October 2nd. Now, we did talk briefly about the possibility that your student may not get placed in this project, in this process, or your student may get a placement and then decide it's not really the right one for them. Circumstances may change and they may not want to accept the project, and so they would decline the project. They would have 4 more opportunities to reapply for a new IQP in what we call our supplemental processes. The main supplemental process, or the largest one, is in January, and that's when we offer any projects that continued to have openings after our primary application process, or openings where students declined their placement, and now we have openings so we can offer them to students who are going to reapply, or transfer students who come in January, or students who did not have sophomore status for the primary application process. They can apply then. And we continue to do this throughout the year in April, July, and September as well.
So thanks, Deb. So I want to make the connection to some of the questions that we're getting around. If a student doesn't receive a placement, what would they, in this first round of application processes, what would they do? What would happen then?
What would happen then is I would hope that they would reach out to our office so that we could help them understand why they may not have received a placement. Usually it's due to only putting a minimum number of preferences in very high demand sites. So we would like to talk to them about that, and about letting them know when the next application process is, and helping them to understand how they can improve their application and their chances of being placed in the next process.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the other question that we're getting, and then I do want to keep us moving along because we've got some more content to cover, was related to eligibility to apply, around what are our eligibility requirements to apply for the program?
Sure. Students need to have sophomore status according to the registrar's office, or according to Workday, which they have access to their status in Workday. They need to be considered a sophomore, so they need to have enough credits to be a sophomore. Students may be in their first year at WPI and come in with enough credits to attain sophomore status, and they are eligible to apply. And students may be in their second year at WPI but had a rocky start, and may not have received all the credits, earned all the credits that they attempted, and may be short some credits to have sophomore status at the beginning of their second year. Those students would not be eligible to apply and would need to wait until the January process.
Thank you. And I just want to also clarify, a question came in around, if a student is on approved reduced course load, the way in which the credits are calculated is a little bit different. So if the person asking this question, if your student has questions, we can clarify their eligibility if they want to just email us or come in. The other thing I'll just answer before we move on is, when students are filling out their preference form, anything that they indicate they're not interested in, they will not be considered for. So that if students say, I'm not interested in this location, they're not considered for that. And then the other question about how many options their students are allowed to include, the more the better. We recommend that students be super flexible, have an open mind, be thinking about all the different opportunities that are presented to them. We require students to indicate a minimum of 6 project center locations in terms that they're, have some level of interest in. But again, we strongly encourage more than 6 to maximize their chances of placement. So we are going to move on to some pre-travel resources. So once students apply and have decided that they are committing to their placement, we want to just talk a little bit more about how the Global Experience Office works with your students to support them through this kind of portion of their journey with us. And to do that, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Kiara.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to go over, like Kathleen said, some pre-travel resources. So about 2 to 3 months, or 2 to 3 terms, or 3 to 4 months before their project, students will be added to an online course, and that includes helpful content, resources as they prepare to travel off campus. And there's going to be modules included in the Canvas course. Each module contains topical information and corresponding assignments and requirements that we have students complete in order to be clear for travel. Within that Canvas course, 1 to 2 terms before the project, students are also going to be receiving a site-specific handbook that project site directors work on in collaboration with us. And it's going to include entry requirements, exact program dates, housing logistics, and any other important information that directors deem necessary for students to review before they travel. When it comes to travel, students are responsible for booking their own flights and airport transfers. They should not book travel until GEO confirms the dates, which we will do via the handbook. And again, those dates will be found in the handbook. Students are responsible for making their own round trip arrangements, and they should make sure that they check with you before they book any airfare. They're responsible for their arrangement to and from the project site unless it's otherwise noted in the handbook. And WPI housing will be available from the arrival date till the departure date. Independent pre and post travel is permitted to students, but again, WPI housing is only available for those arrival and departure dates. So anything outside of that, students are responsible for themselves. So entry requirements, they vary based on location and citizenship status. So students should pay close attention to emails from GEO and any announcements that we give in the Canvas course. We can advise on entry requirements, but it's still students' responsibility to determine if they will require a visa and if they do obtain the visa prior to travel. All students participating in an international project center, except Puerto Rico and Hawaii, are required to submit a color copy of their passport. And proof of the passport is one of the first required submissions. So if your student doesn't have a passport or if it needs renewal, they should start now. If your student was issued a passport when they were a minor and they are due for renewal, they're not eligible to renew via mail, so they have to do it in person at the passport agency. So just plan that accordingly. And then finally, students will attend a pre-departure orientation during the term prior to departure. We're going to be going over final logistics, including GEO and WPI policies, health and safety, and we are available to answer and address any concerns students may have afterwards.
Thanks, Kiara. And I'm just going to bring in a question that was asked a little bit earlier. And it's in relation to like passports and validity. So the question was about, you covered kind of what the students need pre-travel, but the question is whether or not, the way I'm reading it is if they need the passport valid for the application, which we can, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that depends on when the student gets placed, but just validity for passports, it needs to be signed, to have at least 6 empty pages, and it needs to be valid for travel past the end of the program. So past the program end date. That depends on what the student picks for terms. If they're due for a renewal and it's expiring in 6 months, depending, I would tell them to renew it and just get it done just so they can have something renewed at least for the next 10 years and they don't have to worry about it, and to have it in hand, especially in hand the term prior to travel. They at least have to have it in hand before then.
Thanks, Kiara. And I'll just clarify, having a valid passport is not a requirement for the application. In fact, we ask students what kind of their passport status is so that we can provide support to students if they need help with renewing or if they need to obtain their first passport. So that's actually a question in the application, but not a requirement. But to reiterate Kiara's point, if you can, just if you have the opportunity to make sure your student's passport is valid, please go ahead and take the opportunity to do so. Awesome. Thank you. So moving on, we alluded to costs at the beginning and want to just help to clarify program costs and what those are, what those mean, how you can access that information. And so to do so, I'm going to introduce another one of my colleagues, Krista.
Hi, everybody. So, of course, all of this travel will have an extra fee associated with it. We like to break that down into billable costs and non-billable costs. Billable costs are expenses that you will see show up on your student's account, the same place where you pay tuition. So primarily this is the program fee, which will cover on-site housing, so local housing if you're traveling to London. WPI arranges the housing there, and we put a program fee to help cover that housing. Emergency travel insurance, emergency assistance, sometimes some other program components might be included, some cultural excursions or activities. That all goes into the program fee, which is put to your student's account. As we've said before, tuition is also part of this because this is a WPI program. Your students are taught by WPI faculty and receiving WPI credit. So you'll see your normal spring or fall tuition payment. If your student is doing an e-term program, you will be charged summer tuition, which is usually posted at half rate. That's up to the Board of Trustees and is announced every February, March, sometime during spring term. So we do put that estimated tuition costs for summer into our program budgets, just so students and families are aware of that. But we expect that you're expecting the normal tuition payments in fall and spring. So those are the billable costs, the things that go directly onto your student's account. One other thing I want to mention is that tuition and the program fee are on different payment schedules. So you may see tuition, but not the program fee yet. And don't be alarmed by that. Your program fee gets posted about 1 to 2 weeks before the travel starts. The other bucket of costs are the non-billable costs, and these are sort of the out-of-pocket expenses that your student will incur while they're on this program. As Kara mentioned, students are responsible for booking their own flights. And most of these locations, they're going to be buying their own food and cooking for themselves or eating out if they choose to do that all the time. Any sort of tourist activities that they want to do during their free time will be on their own. Other incidentals like that they may incur while they're on site are the non-billable costs. So together, the billable and the non-billable, we create a budget for each program that will detail these costs. These are posted in e-projects in detail for your students to review. As we've said, parents cannot access e-projects. So we encourage you to speak with your students, but we also have created a brief resource for you to be able to see what the overall billable and non-billable costs are estimated to be for each of these programs. So we have that linked in this presentation, and it will be posted to the same place that that this presentation is posted after we're done with it.
Thanks, Krista. And I just want to be explicit about answering one of the questions in the Q&A. The question is, do billable costs vary depending on location? The answer is yes. And these budgets that Krista's referenced will provide each location and its respective budget, which includes both the billable costs and the non-billable costs, as Krista has described.
So of course, that's something really important to go over with your student. And we are very conscious of the fact that this is an additional cost to students. So we try to offer a range of program fees. A student that ends up going to Switzerland, the costs are going to be very different there than a student that goes to Cuenca, Ecuador. Switzerland is just a high cost of living place. So in addition to housing being more expensive, you can expect that the amount that a student's going to pay for groceries in Zurich is going to be very different than the amount a student's going to be paying for groceries in Cuenca. So of course, as I said, we are very conscious that this is an additional expense to students. So WPI has worked really hard to be able to provide every student with a global scholarship. And this is a one-time scholarship that students can use to defray up to $5,000 of a program fee. So this is something that's automatically awarded to a student the first time they do a a program through our office. For most students, that is the IQP, but if your student has already done something like an HUA off campus, they might have already used their global scholarship. But for most students, this is applied to their IQP off campus, and it helps to defray that program fee. Again, that's the housing, the travel insurance, the travel health insurance, and things like that. And then this will be posted to your student's account, the same place that, again, the tuition is posted and the program fee is posted. And it will be posted at the same time as the program fee. So in many cases, in most cases, honestly, the program fee and the scholarship will wipe each other out and there won't be a balance due.
And so to clarify, based on a question that's come in about can the scholarship be used for like travel expenses or airfare? The answer is no, because that's something you're booking independent of us, and the scholarship applies to the program fee. Someone's asking for clarity around the global scholarship, and is it automatically applied? Do students need to do anything to make sure that they get it? How is
No.
the scholarship amount determined? Can you just quickly highlight some of those?
Sure. So students do not need to do anything to have this applied to their IQP. When when it's time to post these scholarships, GEO sends a roster of students to financial aid, and they go through it and they post for all the students who haven't used their global scholarship yet. That automatically gets posted to the student's account. We're trying to make this as frictionless for your students as possible. We really want this to be a benefit to students and to help them, pay their way for these programs. The amount of your scholarship is based on your program fee. So again, using my Switzerland and Ecuador examples, Switzerland's going to have a high program fee. So that scholarship is probably going to be more than the student who goes to Cuenca, Ecuador, where the program fee is smaller. So the program fee is the determinant of how much your global scholarship will be, up to $5,000.
Thanks, Krista.
Yeah.
And last but not least, we want to take this opportunity to reiterate that health and safety is one of our #1 priorities, and to go over some high-level information. My colleague Colin, our Director of Global Risk Management, has a couple words to say as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kathleen. Yes, my name is Colin Waters. I work in risk management. As part of that role, we monitor incident management throughout the world, local news. We are subscribed to various intelligence services, providing us proactive and immediate breaking news, etc., to all these locations throughout the world. There's 56 project centers. Primarily, we're traveling to very safe locations that have been very well established. There are center directors. These are faculty with a lot of experience in these particular locations. We're working with local sponsors that we know quite well, and local universities are partnering with us as well. So for the vast majority, we're going to very well established, very safe locations. All students are covered by WPI's International Travel and Medical Insurance Plan. That is a plan. We use AIG, who are a great travel assistance provider, and that will cover travel and medical expenses for any new health issues, any emergent or emergency health issues. Also covers medical evacuations if needed, and security evacuations. What it does not cover, though, is any routine care, preventative care prescriptions that a student might have. So again, students will get a lot of information on this prior to departure. They'll get FAQs, they'll know the limits and the amounts. But as I mentioned, it doesn't cover your annual checkup, routine care, some dental coverage, etc. It's more so for the new emergent or emergency issues, and then the larger costs such as security and medical evacuation. It is a very robust insurance plan. It works well. Behind the scenes, then we have International SOS, who are one of our partners. They are located in 50 or 60 locations throughout the world and can provide students with medical referrals. Students can speak to doctors, nurses. They can speak to a security specialist It's a service that students can use before, during, and after the trip. Before, an example might be they're taking prescription medication. They want to check, can they bring that into the country? They want to set up a referral or an appointment while they're there. During the trip, again, it could be an incident has happened, a student needs an x-ray. They'll guide them to the nearest vetted local English speaking, if possible, center, and then they'll follow up the student. And then for post travel, it could just be as simple as aftercare once they come back to the US, making sure they get connected with their PCP or specialists as needed. Students will have an assistance app. They will get details on how to download that app. It has great functionality. You can live chat with a doctor, a nurse, a security specialist. There's also a dedicated 24/7 number. Students, if there are large incidents in the area, such as weather events, seismic, or any demonstrations in the area, students will get proactive notifications, giving them guidance on what to do, what areas to avoid, and a function to be able to check in.
Colin, really quick, sorry. One important question came through in the Q&A about whether or not this insurance covers domestic placements.
Yeah, excellent. So the travel and medical insurance does not apply to domestic placements at all. You're relying on your own, the WPI health coverage that you have. One slight nuance to that is students can avail domestically of emotional support services. So mental health resources are offered not just internationally, but also domestically. And I would like to point out as well that our insurance is primarily a medical insurance for international travel. It doesn't cover any flight delays or interruptions. We always encourage students to get either flexible flights when they're booking, or to make sure that they have travel interruption insurance. Primarily, they buy this through their airlines when booking flights.
Thank you.
Thank you. And quickly, as I just mentioned, if students will need some mental health support, as a lot of you know, outside of Massachusetts or wherever their local counselor, whatever state they're in, often they cannot, provide ongoing treatment to them when they're in the example, in Ecuador. So we do have services through International SOS that students can avail of. They can speak to a local counselor that specializes in their, concern or area that they want to, get more assistance with. That is a free service to them. We also have at WPI the Student Development Counseling Center. They have, I believe, 16 licensed counselors. We work very closely with them. If there's any students in distress, we can often have consults with them or check in. So a lot of the resources at WPI are still available to students while they travel internationally. On site then as well, we do have WPI faculty advisors. These are the two professors. Typically, it's two professors with approximately 24 students. They are on site with the students. We've had some very successful project travel over the last few years. We will say that often when students get into a little bit more medical difficulty is during their free time. Sometimes it involves alcohol, driving motorized vehicles, which they are not allowed to do so, going on very, aggressive hikes in inappropriate footwear. So we do try and encourage students during their free time to abide by the rules that we guide them to. There are also a variety of the Global Experience Office and other WPI resources that we can connect students to, even though they're international at the campus.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Colin. And so last but not least, and I'll just also, before we go into the last couple of minutes for any remaining questions, we're going to share these slides in the recording with all of the links that we've displayed today during the webinar. The Off-Campus IQP website has a ton of resources, both for your students and for you, parents and families. Students can, as we mentioned a couple of times, can browse program options and more specific and detailed information about the different project centers and places where we offer off-campus IQPs in e-projects. Families, you can see both the program listing as well as the accompanying budgets that we've created and published in a couple different places on our website. You can also see a full preview of the application in some of the drop-down sections of this off-campus IQP website. And then we're always updating the dates and deadlines. So in one of the previous slides, Deb talked about how, this is the first of many applications for the 26-27 application year. So each new process comes with a new set of dates and deadlines that are always published on this website. So if you bookmark anything, make it this, and your students this and e-projects. So we're going to head into question and answers, and I'll just kind of popcorn this around based on the questions that we're getting. One of the questions, maybe this could be for either Colin or Krista, is around the nature of the lodging. So what type of housing are students staying in?
Yeah, thank you. Krista, feel free to weigh in. Typically, they are staying in, all the accommodation is vetted. We have a vetting assessment form, and so we want to make sure that the accommodation is safe in a secure area, with some fire protection services. Students are made aware of any risks or deficiencies, and that hopefully it is centrally located close to their projects and close to public transportation. In the past, it has been primarily hotels, short-term accommodation that students are staying in. Sometimes it is accommodation through another partner university, but that is the typical accommodation.
Thank you. We have another question about estimated out-of-pocket expenses, which I can just go ahead and answer. In this link that I'm displaying here, we're going to provide, again, the estimated out-of-pocket expenses are calculated based on basically cost of living, what the cost of living is in specific locations. So they will vary. And we are providing in the e-projects budgets more detail around like what we anticipate a flight is going to cost, what we anticipate meals are going to cost, what we anticipate incidentals might cost. So it's our best guess. Of course, spending habits, your students' spending habits are going to dictate how much they do or don't spend. But again, we're trying to give you our best estimate of what the kind of total program cost is. There's another question here about if a student is assigned to a residential, so a project center where students are living on site in location that's not in Worcester, what is their public transportation? I'm thinking, I don't know. So I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Residential project centers that are like in proximity to Worcester. I guess I'm making sure I understand. Students are responsible for getting themselves to the project center if it's a residential site. So I guess that's the short answer. And so that would be reflected in the budgets. We have another question here about a student on medication and obtaining a sufficient supply for the full duration of the program. So we do see this often. I can start, and Colin, feel free to weigh in here. Lots of our students are traveling with medications, and we, in our pre-travel Canvas course and part of our pre-travel preparation and requirements, students have the opportunity to disclose information to us about their health, and often we're asking about medications, and that's when this comes up. We will also meet with students individually and or direct them to International SOS for more specific guidance on any specific medications, any restrictions, both in quantity, legality around the medications. What we found is that often prescribers in the United States, now it depends, prescribers in the United States will be able to prescribe assuming the medication is legal and the quantity is, the entry requirements aren't restricting quantity for the full 60 or 90 days. But I would say if your student has specific questions, we can certainly reach out. Colin, I think there's a question about if a student needed a refill, just clarifying that's not covered under our insurance.
Yeah, I'm seeing David's question here. Maybe I missed the refill. Sorry, I see the refill piece. David, I would certainly encourage your student to reach out to the office. Obviously it'd be ideal if they can bring in at least a 60-day supply given a 7-week program. Refills, depending on the medication, can be very difficult to obtain. There's a cost associated with them as well because you will probably need a referral, go to a specialist, and then the actual medication itself, depending on where they're applying to. But if this is a very specific type of medication that needs to be taken daily, but you know that you'll have an inadequate supply, we'd like to know more about that student's health concerns and probably guide them towards some sort of programs that might suit their needs.
Thanks, Colin. And we are right at the 1 o'clock hour. So I just want to thank all my colleagues for spending some time sharing information about our program. And thank you for your time and for the support that you give to your students as they're navigating this process. As I mentioned, we will make these slides available to you. We will make the recording available to you. And we are available to your students and to you if you have additional questions and want additional support. Our hope and our goal is that any student who wants to participate can and does. And so we're here to help and we want to make that happen. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.